Yep.
Sounds good.
You guys were referred by Kayla, correct?
Yes.
And dog is Zuri?
Zuri, yeah.
All right, cool. And you've done some training with Zuri, but was it leash reactivity still? Is that what we're struggling with?
Yeah, I'd say like leash reactivity, she also just doesn't respond, and that could be totally on us. When we do correct her, she just doesn't listen.
Okay.
So like we had in-home training in this past summer, I think it was, with someone from Found, and she couldn't have been better. Like she was an angel when he was there. Like it's just so funny how she responds to different people. So it could be an us thing. But I think what we're looking for is a little bit more empowerment, like when she is corrected. And so Kayla had highly recommended e-collar training.
Yeah. So you guys, I'm assuming, are on a prong collar?
Yes.
Okay. So go ahead and fill me in on Zuri, or is that like a bulk of, is that essentially it there?
No, actually, I kind of wrote up some points just to make sure we cover all the topics. So she doesn't respond to the corrections every time. Definitely has reactivity to other dogs. Not every dog. For whatever reason, certain dogs, and that's when we're walking around the sidewalk, when she sees one through the window. But at Found, they do really well with play groups. So selective dog play groups. So there, it's possible that she can be around dogs, just depends on which one. And then the other biggest thing I can think of is that she acts out towards us if like we're holding the leash and she can't get to another dog. So the biggest incident being last year in December. It was actually my fault, but she was barking, and so in my head I was like, oh, she likes it at home when I pick her up. I thought that would calm her down. Yeah, that was big no. But she actually has it in her to like bite and like make sure she's can do whatever possible to get to the other dog. So she's bit me. She actually like got your leg pant the other day. So she has that in her, I guess you could say.
So she bit you when you tried to pick her up outside during a reactive moment.
Yes.
Okay, and then when she nipped your leg, was there any puncture? Or was it just like like you just felt the mouth and that was it?
It was just a very slight graze. It was, we were just walking on the sidewalk, and so I kind of stepped to the side a little bit, and there was somebody that was walking, towards us and then past us, and so she was in front of me a little bit to the side, and then she was trying to get after him, which put me in between her and the person that kept walking, and she just kind of just nipped my pant leg a little bit. She didn't like break skin or anything.
Sure.
Loose clothing.
She's not normally people reactive, which is weird, but that seemed odd.
The bite for you, there was punctures?
Yes, I had to go to the emergency room.
That was an ER trip.
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to the club.
Yeah. But actually, the person who was sewing me, it was very big enough to get a couple stitches, and she actually had also been bit. So that was like the most comforting thing ever, is that she could relate to me in that moment, because everyone else was like, oh my gosh, that's your dog that did that.
Sure. Yeah. No, I've been bit too.
Okay. Yep. I can show you. I think you can probably see it. But yeah.
We're bite brother and sister.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else about Zuri?
The only other thing I have is that she not only unleashes, like sometimes pulls. So you have to get to that point where it's a harsh correct to make sure she knows not to do that.
How big is she?
She's 50 pounds. To me, she's a smaller pit bull though, so she's pretty compact, shorter.
All right, that answered my next question, which was, what breed is she? Pit
bull, yeah.
Anything else?
I don't think so. That's all I had. Okay. Yeah.
With her reactivity, from a scale of 1 to 10, like what would you rate it?
It can get to a 10, I guess you could say, but would it be 10 every time? I would probably say no. Like she'll sometimes have like a soft bark if she sees a dog across the street and be like, well, I'm just gonna give him my presents. But if it's a dog she knows and definitely doesn't like, that's when I have no control.
Sure. And the prong collar, do you know what size it is? 2.25 or 3 millimeter?
I don't. I'm sorry, I can find out from Found,
Does
I
it
guess.
look big or small to you?
Uh, they actually last time when we did the in-home, they had recommended we upgrade. So I'm assuming it's the 3 millimeter.
Okay. Anything else?
The only other thing, so what I would love to get to as well is his family has a golden doodle and super friendly, awesome. I would love to feel comfortable introducing them at some point, whether it be when she's fully trained or wherever that may be. But right now I have like post-traumatic stress disorder of like even getting them around. So I think that would be like a goal to work towards.
Okay. But anything else?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Cool. So this is not out of the ordinary. And the reason why you're having such a problem is because you are on a prong collar. Okay. Prong collar is a great tool. Don't get me wrong. I love prong collars. I stopped using them many years ago because of that very problem where so dogs are physical animals. They bite each other. So they already have a higher tolerance for pain or discomfort, however you want to look at it. Okay. Prong collar, of course, is meant to mimic a dog bite. That's why it looks the way it looks. But even if you gave your harshest 10 correction, and if she's on a 20, you're not going to match her. Okay. And this is not uncommon. I've had, even going into the year of 21, probably at least 5 other people with that very same problem. Okay. So that's why I don't do prong. I incorporate prong sometimes because it gives you much more leverage and control physically. But correctionally, if we're trying to override the dog, it falls short, unfortunately. Okay. So leash reactivity. Yeah. So a bulk of the stuff is mainly just because of your training tool. Okay. So I do just strictly remote collar. All my dogs or puppies older than 6 months for the past 10 years are all on e-collar. Why? Because of stuff like this.
Yeah.
Right. So there's 3 kind of primary methods or 3 very popular tools for training. One is positive only, clicker training, food-based training, reward-based, blah, blah, blah. Great for puppies under 6 months, great for foundational stuff, great as a reinforcer, not good for behavior, not good for correcting things. Then we have gentle leader, which is like the positive reinforcement kind of tool. And then we have prong collar. Okay. Much better. They give you about a 40 to 60% obedience success rate. The problem is if you take that leash off, your dog is aware that there's no leash. Now there's no connection. Now you can't make things happen. Okay. So then your dog will, I've seen some pretty well-trained dogs on leash, but as soon as the owner took the leash off, we have a problem. Okay. E-collar, on or off leash, doesn't matter. I have control. Okay. The other thing is e-collar allows me to compensate for lots of things. If I get a soft owner with a more assertive dog, if I get I had a young lady, she's one of my most popular stories to tell, but she was like 90 pounds, maybe 100 pounds with a 150-pound Great Dane.
Oh my gosh.
And he was dog reactive.
Okay.
And she lived in the middle of Wicker Park. So clearly he was much more physically stronger than her and also just weighed more. So she did prong and e-collar because she needed as much leverage as possible, but in her case, it didn't matter how strong can you yank. It was put the e-collar higher.
Yeah.
The e-collar is going to compensate for all that stuff, So e-collar gets you, in my opinion, as close to 100% control as possible, even in an emergency type situation. Okay. Now Kayla has a story with Pepper. I don't know if she told you about when she took off after a rabbit. right?
At her parents' cottage, is that the one?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
But Pepper didn't come back, right?
Mhm.
Now the reason why that is, and I talked to Kayla about this because she uses the Educator brand. She uses the yellow remote.
Yep.
I don't, not that I don't like the brand, but I don't use it just because I found it lacking. And there was a couple of factors there. One, that remote is meant for 35-pound dogs and under.
Mhm.
And Pepper is bigger than 35 pounds. That's one factor. So now we have a kind of like a in boxing with those featherweight, middleweight, and heavyweight, right? So like you could imagine Pepper as like a middleweight, and then like the collar's meant for a featherweight. So there's already that size discrepancy, right? Plus she was in prey drive, running straight after a rabbit. Plus she's going, she's moving, right? And that's where we need things like output or power to override those situations.
Mhm.
Okay. So the reason why I bring that up is, well, that's why that, in my opinion, failed in that setting. But when we talk about pitties, and I have a pitty myself, I love pitties. Um, a dog reactive pitty is different than a dog reactive German Shepherd or a dog reactive Great Dane. Okay. They're more intense. They can definitely override a lot of power. And you could have a 30 to 35-pound pitty with like the power of a 90-pound dog.
Mhm.
You know, so when it comes to pitties, I always just tell people, if you're dealing with reactivity, you just go for the highest powered collar there is. Okay, just in case.
Mhm.
So she technically would have two options. um, and it's like, if you did the one that was appropriate to her size and then it's not working and you're maxed out or whatever and it's not working, well, now we just wasted money and time, right? So it's just like a few bucks more, and it's meant for a 70-pound and over dog. We use it for our Rottweilers, our Mastiffs, our Great Danes, all the big dogs. So even though she's 50 pounds, she'd be on a high-powered collar. So at this way, the whole concept of like corrections not working should not be an issue. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, throughout 10 years of training, worked with lots of aggressive and reactive dogs. Um, every now and then, I get a dog where it doesn't sink in. Okay, so the goal here is that you get her to a point where we don't even have to worry about reactivity.
Mhm.
And I want you to think of it as like, um, if someone used to be an alcoholic and then they sober up, they're still an alcoholic.
Mhm.
They're just sober,
Yeah.
right? So think of reactivity as the same thing. It's kind of like you have a reactive dog, but
Yeah.
they're sober.
Yeah.
Right? But it's going to take constant work, right? It's going to take you reinforcing. It's going to take, and it's not like it's a ton of work. It's just once we get her to a good place, people tend to become complacent.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, my dog's not reactive anymore. I go, they're not reactive because of all the stuff that we're doing,
Mhm.
right? So as soon as you start to become lenient or lax, next thing you know, reactivity comes right back.
Yeah.
Okay. And so with the collar, so the reason I bring that up about it doesn't sink in is I get maybe 1 to 3 dogs a year that we can stop the reactivity in
Yeah.
the moment. So like my worst case was this guy with this like 100-pound pit, and his name was Roscoe, and he'd be reactive, and it'd take a lot of power to shut him down, and then 3 seconds later, a new dog could pass by and boom, there he'd go again, right? It was just every time he saw a dog, just boom. And we tried everything. We tried prong with e-collar. We tried slip chain with e-collar. We tried low level. We tried medium. We tried high. We tried continue. We tried everything, right? And it just wouldn't register, right? Now he's um, it's rare, but it can happen. But typically when it happens, it's almost always some kind of pity or bully type breed. Okay. So I don't want to squash your hopes or anything like that, but it's just kind of like, I haven't seen your dog, so I don't know. Most of the time, and it's 1 to 3 dogs a year is what I get of those cases out of all my reactive dogs. So, but as long as you're willing to like follow through, it shouldn't be an issue. The biggest thing that always holds people back is themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. So like, let's say we're working through everything and you're struggling with reactivity. And I'm like, and I told you, you need to go to 90. And I go, how'd it go? And you're like, oh, Jesse, it was a bad week. And I was like, well, how high did you go on the collar? And you said 45. Like, well, 45 is not 90, so we don't know where we're really at unless we go there, right?
Yeah.
So what makes me an effective and efficient trainer is I'm willing to go to those levels to get my result.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's what, so the dog learns, oh, when Jesse's here, you guys go to 90. But when Jesse's not here, you don't go to 90, right?
Yeah.
Which is why, like, sometimes, like what you said about the other trainer,
Yep.
right? Now, did the other trainer correct Zuri ever?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's why I don't correct dogs anymore. Because now it's tied to that guy. Or
Yeah.
that lady.
Yeah. And I can see that, because when she does go to Found, they have no problem with her. They say she's great and wonderful, and it just is so frustrating, because I'm like, I know I'm correcting her, but for whatever reason, it's either not right, or she just knows she can get away with it with me. So that's why I'm like, I'm ready to try a collar, because it's something about, like, us that are not in control, like Found was, I guess.
Correct. So, as trainers, we know how to correct correctly.
Yeah.
And prong collar takes more technical skill than an e-collar.
Mm-hmm.
With an e-collar, as long as it's fitted correctly, and I go to 90, she's gonna get 90. Doesn't matter who has a remote, me, you, or you, she's gonna feel the same thing, right? As long as it's fitted correctly. So that's the other reason why I always just train all my dogs on it, is because it leaves very little, how do you say, gray area in terms of stuff like that. It's consistent. Okay. So, are you guys familiar with e-collar? I know, like, obviously with Pepper, but do you know, like, the technology or what it is at all?
There was a brief moment where I think you did also looked into it, but we looked into, I think, the one that even Kayla has. It was before I even knew Kayla, actually, the educator. I like looked into it, did a ton of research, but never have used.
Okay. So e-collar, they use the technology in humans. If you've ever been to a chiropractor or physical therapist and you've had, like, the nodes to move muscles or stimulate your muscles, that's an e-collar. It's just a muscle stimulator. So if you go to Walgreens and you look in the back section, you'll find what's called a TENS unit, TENS, and you put on your back and it moves your back muscles to help ease back pain and relax them, right? So that's e-collar. You're not electrocuting your dog. It's not electricity running through your dog's body like the electric chair or anything like that. It's a centralized current that only stimulates the muscles that it's making contact with. So if we put the 2 probes in the neck, that's where we're going to see that twitch. Okay. With the human version, there's risk of electrocution. If you have a pacemaker, they can't use it. And there's also risk of electrical burns if they don't place it correctly. With e-collar, we don't have that. It's fully waterproof. I've worked with dogs with seizures and heart murmurs, medical conditions, no issues. And also it won't burn skin because, again, it's not electricity or anything like that. Okay. So it's electric, but not electricity is how I describe it. So what makes it very effective is that, dogs are physical creatures. They bite each other. And, of course, that's where prong collar comes from. But if your dog is too physically tough or just has a high threshold for discomfort, or maybe just don't have the technical skill, it tends to fall short. So with e-collar, pending you have the right output, we should be able to override the dog. Okay. So I just keep dialing up until eventually I find your dog's working level. Okay. So our collars go 0 to 127. Kayla's goes to 100. Okay. So it just means that we have 27 more divisions. So we can really fine tune it. Old school e-collars only had like 5 levels. So like 5 and 127 are the same, but I have 122 more divisions now. So it's very refined.
Yeah.
So before, on 2, your dog wouldn't listen, and on 3, your dog would be yelping. So like you had no in between. So the new ones that we use now are much, much better than the ones that first came out. The first thing I would do with the case like this is we have to teach an appropriate or a strict heel. So that would fix the leash pulling. And that sets the reference point for the reactivity. Okay. So in my style of training, if I take 5 steps, the dog takes 5 steps. I take 3, the dog takes 3, I take 1, the dog takes 1. When I stop, the dog automatically sits. And I don't care what the environment is. And this is what they completely slack leash, up to no leash if the owner wants. Okay. So the reason why we do that first is a lot of reactivity can either be from tension on the leash, which frustrates the dog, or no reference point. So if the dog is going out and they're like constantly looking at things, they're like already kind of like over threshold. And then you add in a stimuli like a dog and then they blow up. Okay. So this exercise helps calm dogs down, but also it gives them something to focus on to help pacify them. Um, so the theory here would be you're more important to your dog than the dog's walking by. Okay, so we should not see anything. That's the theory. Okay.
Mhm.
Uh, Sometimes it works. Sometimes it only works for some of the stuff. Okay. So then if
That's the dream.
so when we start the training, we'd have class one. We would review heel. Okay, with the e-collar, I teach it to you my style. I'll give you your homework. We may or may not cover reactivity, so there may be reactivity. Or I'll say like, you know what, don't worry about it. Just do the exercise. We're gonna pick up on it next class. Okay. Come back class two. What have we seen? Great. We can walk past calm dogs, or we can walk past like this, right? But dogs behind fences or dogs that bark at her are a problem. I go, nope, no problem. That sounds normal. Here's class two. We're gonna work the second half of heel. We're gonna play with things a little bit, raise the number a little bit, and maybe some instructions on what to do when we come by those types of situations. Come by class three. How are we doing? Even better. We get little outbursts here and there, but we can stop it, and she's becoming less reactive. I go, great. We're going to keep up with that. Okay. Because that, as long as you start to see it decline, we're good.
Yeah.
Okay. So on the spectrum of reactivity towards humans is almost always the first thing that goes away. Construction workers, skateboarders, rollerbladers, strollers, all that stuff is almost always the first thing that goes away. Calm dogs is next. Then excited puppy type energies like in the middle. Then other reactive dogs or dogs behind fences. And then the last thing is sudden run-ins with dogs. So if you turn the corner and there's a dog, that's like the hardest because it's so abrupt.
Yeah.
Okay. So the spectrum typically works that way. So this last bit of other reactive dogs, dogs behind fences, or like surprise encounters take longer because you can't plan for them. They're abrupt, and like sometimes when you run into somebody who also has a reactive dog, they tend to want to leave. Right? They're like, oh, I'm embarrassed, or like, oh, this is bad, and they want to leave. So if they leave before you can calm down Zuri, Zuri thinks her behavior got them to leave.
Yeah.
So now it technically reinforces, right? So that's why that tends to take longer. So as long as we're making progress on this first half, I go, this is great. That's normal. This stuff is going to take time. Okay. And gradually you just have to nitpick at it until we can kind of just get rid of it. And then it's prepping you as a handler. Okay. So it's, of course, training your dog, but then there's training you, and you're like really the biggest component.
Yep.
Because like you said, dogs are kind of like kids. We're growing up, like if I was with my mom, it was like I'll behave because my mom was strict. But if I was with my grandma, I would like do more stuff because my grandma let me get away with it. And if I was with my mom and my grandma, I would still push stuff because my grandma would override my mom and say like, oh, leave him alone. He's just a kid. Right. So I learned that. So that's kind of like Zuri, right? She sees you guys, and then she sees the handlers or the trainers I found. And there's just that discrepancy between the two of you, right? So this is why, especially now, because I used to have that same problem. It was like, oh, Jesse, when you're here, the dog's great, but then when you leave, like the dog's not so great, because the dog had a relationship with me.
Yeah.
Because I would correct him or whatever for the owner, and then the owner wasn't learning anything or wasn't transferring to the owner. Now we don't touch the dog unless we need to. Okay, so it's all verbal coaching. I'm there present with you. I explain everything to you, and you're working, real time, and I coach you through it. You make mistakes and blah, 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 and then I just guide you through it. So you leave learning a lot more, plus everything is tied to you from the get-go. Okay, so again, the only thing that would inhibit you is if I end up telling you to go up really, really high on the collar and then you don't. Okay. Questions so far about any of that stuff?
I don't think so. I think that's Kayla also did a good job of her journey with the collar too, of letting us in on that. One thing I did fail to mention too is I think we would be looking to use you guys as board and train as well. So we do. My parents live in Michigan. His parents live in Iowa, so we're gone quite a few times during the year.
Sure.
And then on top of which, I think that brings up another point I failed to mention. Sorry, is at Found actually. Like I said, she does great with selective dogs. I think earlier this year, maybe I think almost a year ago, she ended up nipping a dog. She was the one that got hurt, which was the ironic thing about it. But for no reason at all, just kind of like, I can send you the video if that's helpful. But since then, she's been in a muzzle every time she's in a play group now. So she does selected dogs, on top of which a muzzle. But just want to give that heads up, because I think we would also be looking to use you guys for that.
Sure. So do you want to do a board and train, or do you want to do in-person training?
Oh, sorry. I guess I don't. Kayla had mentioned board and train. I think that's what she did with Pepper.
She did a daycare and train.
Okay, daycare and train.
Sure.
Sorry, I'm getting all these confused. But what would be your best recommendation? It sounds like in-person training would be.
Yeah.
Okay, best. Yeah, that's
when it comes to behavior stuff, I always push people towards in-person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now I make more money with daycare and trains and board and trains. Okay.
Yeah.
But it's not about the money. It's about, I need you to leave with the tools and knowledge to handle life, right?
Yeah.
So this would be the pros and cons. Daycare and train, chances are we're not going to see reactivity here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, can we work on stuff here that will help you with reactivity? Absolutely, but it's still going to be a journey.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's going to be a big gap. So with the daycare and train, to try to help close that gap as much as possible, we record the first training session of every command that we teach, and then we send it to you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So like, let's say you did I'm going to just say board and train for the sake of, make this easy. Let's say you did a 2-week board and train. Okay. The first week you get one video that's about an hour to hour and a half long of everything that we taught Zuri the first time. So there's a total of 6 commands. So it's usually around like 6 to 9 videos made into one long video. Okay. So that you see how she responds to the e-collar, because some dogs are flighty. Some dogs get anxious. Some dogs get nervous. Some dogs get really defiant, right? So when you see the first session, you're seeing your dog raw, okay? And you see how she responds and how we work through it, because that's what you need. How do I work through a situation where my dog's not being compliant, or it's something out the ordinary, right? We send that to you, you watch it, and then the second week you'll get another video, which we call the overview, and we go over all the stuff again. But now that it's been 2 weeks into the training, you're going to see the difference from where she started to where she ended before you took her back home, right? And then you have your follow-up with us. And the follow-up would be, so you watch the videos, you would apply them to what you would start applying them to life. And you could, take a couple of weeks, and then you could come back and schedule follow-up and say, hey, Jesse, everything's great, but we're struggling with a couple of things here. And then I help close that gap. Okay. So that's what I did with Kayla.
Mm-hmm.
And you can push back the follow-ups as much as you want. They don't have to be sequential. Okay. So let's say you did that and you took the videos and everything's great. Reactivity is great. All that stuff's great. And you have not needed to use a follow-up. And then a year later, you need a follow-up. You schedule it a year later. Okay. They don't expire. Now with the in-person, so pro, board and train, or daycare and train, we get it done faster. In a shorter period of time. There's still always going to be work on your end, because you still have to learn everything. We still have to transfer everything to you, right? Making sure that the dog respects what you say and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But it's easier because it's press a button. With the in-person, it takes longer, but you're going to learn so much more.
Yeah.
A lot more. Okay. You're going to develop a lot of skills over that time frame. Okay. Because our daycare and train or board and train are not going to help you when you turn a corner and there's a surprise dog.
Right.
Yeah. It's not going to help you when your dog goes under stress and maybe becomes flighty. That's all stuff that I always recommend that people do themselves. Mm-hmm. So as soon as I hear reactivity and stuff, I'm like, yeah, ideally do it yourself, because you'll walk away knowing how to handle life with your dog. Yeah. Now, what you pick and choose is up to you. That's just my advice.
Yeah, no, I think that works fine. And sorry if I even said board and train. I meant boarding in general.
Sure.
But when she is boarded, though, like that incident did happen with the play group.
Yeah, no, it's not a problem. I mean, and that's wise that they're doing what they're doing. Like we would do the same thing too, because then it's just liability.
Yeah.
So and it's all, I'm assuming she's muzzle trained then.
Yes.
That's good.
Well, I mean, she'll always try and get it off, but yeah.
Sure. Let's take a note here. Okay, so going over the redirection, where she, bit you and all that, that's not what we would call human reactivity. It's a redirected bite
Yeah.
or redirected aggression. Um, so I actually don't factor that in to the biting aspect because you added in a variable.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was my fault for sure.
Sure. So I mean it's there obviously, and I'm aware of the nip on the pant leg and all that stuff. Not uncommon, but that's typically where a dog is so over threshold that they have to, that frustration has to go somewhere. So if you're the closest thing, you're going to get nipped or bit. Okay,
Yeah.
which is also something I would cover with you with in-person training, so that we prevent that from happening. Okay. Let me see here. Window reactivity, is that correct?
Yeah. And so we have two big windows that look out to the street, and yeah, it's basically anyone like a mailman or anyone who she thinks is coming close to our apartment, but especially dogs.
Gotcha. So that we would handle a bit differently, so that this way you don't become collar dependent all the time. So I'll give you other means of correction that aren't reliant on the e-collar.
Okay.
Window reactivity is normal.
Yeah.
Okay. Because like when you see people walking outside, like, oh, it's my neighbor walking their dog, or like, that's the mailman, or that's Amazon, blah, blah, blah. Dogs don't do that. Dogs don't know that. Right. So to them, she's being territorial. She's doing her job. She's like, oh, just letting you know there's a dog here. Don't step on our property. Right. So that's what she's doing. But you can always disagree with it. Okay. We can always stop stuff we don't want. So that's not a problem. Or at least it shouldn't be. But socializing with that golden doodle.
Mm-hmm.
So first thing we'd have to do is get that reactivity under control, making sure that's going well. And then we could do that if we had access to that dog as soon as you'd like, or we can use a dog and I show you how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to integrating dogs or building a friendship between Zuri and another dog, I have a very strict process. Okay, it's simple. It's really a class. Some people do 2 classes, so because they'll do like one energy and then like another type of energy. So like maybe a low level old dog versus a high energy high energy puppy or something. So they get the spectrum. And I show you how to go about it, and it's really just repetition. Okay, so like I've had clients who've had very reactive dogs, and they're not dog park dogs. They're not dogs that can socialize with dogs on the street or a random dog, whatever, which is not realistic. But like they might have a couple of friends with dogs,
Yeah.
and they continue to see them, and they repeat it, and they're able to make friends with those dogs. Okay, that's more realistic because those are dogs that you would see again,
Mm-hmm.
and technically dogs that we also have some degree of control over, right? Because they're like your friend's dog or relative's dog or whatever. So you can do a lot more. You can apply a lot more rules and boundaries and stuff as you're doing that process. Some dogs you can socialize them, and then by the end of the session they're great. Some dogs take 10 to 20 repetitions with that particular dog. I give you all the information, and then it's just do this and repeat.
Yep.
Until you get there, okay? Or she might not just vibe with every dog that she meets. Like you said, they found dogs that she's compatible with, and others that they know not to pair her with, right? So that's stuff that we would find out. So don't be discouraged if it doesn't work with every dog.
Yeah.
I don't like everybody I meet, and I'm sure not everybody that meets me likes me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's just a lot of weight on his family dog that I'm like, I hope it works. Could be so much more convenient, but understand that, yeah, not every dog for sure.
Yeah, and there's always the option of control. So like, let's say you did go and like to visit or something, and that golden doodle was there, and like they kept their golden doodle with them or whatever. So they're in the same space. They're just not loose and walking around.
Yeah.
or Zuri would be at your feet laying down and not moving for 3 hours while the golden doodle's there or something, right? So we just put her under control because she's not capable of coexisting, right? So there's more than one answer. I just don't know what the answer is going to be.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions so far?
I don't
No,
think so.
I think those were the main ones. I know I'm less concerned about the window reactivity.
Yeah,
I mean, that's some strangers walking by, she's gonna bark. Like, I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. And you can control window reactivity and not kill security.
Yeah.
Because that's a it's the most
I
common.
know sometimes I'm like, yeah, you can go ahead and bark. That's a strange man right there.
Yeah. No, yeah, you would only stop it when you don't want it, right? So if it's like, I don't care what you bark at, but when I tell you to quiet down, you need to quiet down.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's completely up to you. In terms of how much control are you looking to achieve with Zuri?
I definitely don't see her as being like an off leash dog. Like I don't know why. It's just not really that important, I guess, especially living in the city. Like I don't take her to dog parks very much. I mean, ever since she was a puppy, basically. When she was a puppy, she was great with dogs. So I guess just feeling okay in those specific scenarios that I told you. Like I think that's my main concern, and that's how much control I want over her, is just to, when it matters most, listen to me and be able to calm her down.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So you have a number of options, and I'll give them to you, and you can kind of pick and choose what you want to do. I typically approach things with like, I look at the problem, I kind of assess what you're wanting and needing, and then I have like what I think you may need. So you're in the 6, 9 to 12 week or class range. If we did 6, consider that like the bare bones. Okay. Yeah. The way I would divide those 6 is 2 would be on heel, a third potentially to go over reactivity if we're still struggling with it. So that's like a variable. 4, socializing with another dog, because that's like the core of everything, right? The redirection stuff, there's nothing you can do about redirection other than if she's not being reactive, we shouldn't see redirection, right? So that's how that would work. But I would also teach you how to use your tools to protect yourself from redirection as well. Okay. So I think with 4 classes, 2 on heel, 1 on reactivity if needed, and then 1 on socialization, that leaves 2. If all that's going great, then we can work towards recall, which is common called, which to me is the most important command for your dog to learn. Or if you want to learn something else like stationary control, for instance, if you go to Michigan or something, and you don't want her to move for a period of time, so you have that control, right? So we can do that with class 5 and 6. If you're not going to use recall. Okay, so in my opinion, your dog should know recall just in case your dog gets off leash ever.
Yeah.
But some people go like, I'd never let my dog go off leash, and I go, I understand that, but shit happens, and they're like, no, I want it, and I go, all right, that's fine. You're paying me. I'm just letting you know. The 9 classes, it's the same layout, but we can cover more control, and we can definitely cover like recall, stationary control, the heel and the reactivity stuff. And the 12-week class or the 12 class program is like the whole 9 yards, all the commands, and we push everything to it as an advanced level as we can. More control means more discipline. More discipline means most likely not going to have a reactive dog. Okay. But that's personal preference. The biggest variable here is just going to be the behavior. Okay. So like if we spend 2 classes on recall, on heel, and for whatever reason we spend 3 classes on reactivity, then that leaves us 1 class to cover something else. Okay. There's a logic to it, and I can only progress you, if you're obviously pushing things, because you're my feedback. So if you're comfortable with things, with like using the high levels and stuff if needed, but like you're not really practicing or putting yourself in those contexts as much, we're not getting any real data, right? So like I got a couple of clients with reactive dogs, and they're just not ready to really go out, like, 5 to 7 when people are coming home from work and stuff. Like, it's like the busiest. They're going at quieter times.
Yeah.
And I'm like, when you're ready, you got to go out there, because we need to know, is what we're doing working, right? Because if you're seeing 3 dogs on a walk versus 30, I really don't have a lot of information, right?
Yep.
So, so either one of those will be fine. 6 is, again, the bare bones. We just focus on what I know you need, and if we're making great progress, and we have some classes left over, I'll ask you, what do you want to learn? You let me know, and we'll take it from there. 9 is a nice middle ground.
Yeah.
To not only cover the stuff that you need, but also to make sure we can get heel, recall, and stationary control. And then 12 is we just teach more commands and push them to a higher level. So that's where I would put you guys at. Questions about any of that stuff?
How long, like, let's say if we went with a 9, like, I think, sorry, you hit on it earlier, but what does that 9 look like spread out in a timeline?
Sure. So it'd be 2 on heel, potentially a 3rd on reactivity, 4th on socialization, that stays the same. 2 on recall.
Yeah.
And then stationary control, and then 8 and 9 would be like pushing how do you say, making sure we're getting everything, what's the word, like closing it off, like making sure the obedience is good. We're going to end up with a little bit of extra, but there's always the room to teach more.
Yeah.
Or there's room for, hey, reactivity is not going as smoothly as we'd like it to be. I play it by ear. Every class is different. Sometimes I've had people come in and something happened out of nowhere that we weren't planning for. So we just take a tangent, and, because we took a tangent and covered something that we didn't plan for, we may not cover everything. It's rare. It's usually pretty straightforward with the stuff that people deal with, but every now and then that happens. So it gives you a little bit of a window with like 1 or 2 classes.
Sorry, how much time would that, like, in like
calendar time?
Yeah, like 2 months or?
Oh, that's like 2.5 months, 3 months, and that's if you're doing consistently.
Yep.
Right. If you're doing every week.
Yeah.
So essentially, it's not like 9 classes. So it'd be like 1 class a week, and then kind of like training and practice.
Correct. Yeah. So it's 1 class a week for an hour. Okay. And we do 1 every week. Some people try to do 2 in a week. I tell them no, because you need a week to make mistakes. You need a week to get plenty of opportunities to like see reactivity and all that stuff and try to correct it. You need time to, experiment and mess up and have successes and failures.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's what we were just trying to understand, time commitment wise from our end as well.
Yeah.
Sure. Now, when it comes to that, like your homework, okay, I tell people I'm the lazy man's dog trainer, because you train as you go about your life.
Yeah.
Okay. There'll be a couple. So heel is the fastest thing that people teach, because you walk your dog multiple times a day.
Yeah.
Okay. So every walk is going to be a training walk. Okay. That's forever now. Recall takes the longest to teach, because it requires you to go somewhere. Okay. You got to go to the park. You got to have distractions, squirrels, rabbits, dogs, people, blah, 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 blah. Right. So don't think at the end of 9, 6 classes, whatever, you're going to have perfect recall. You're going to have the tools and the knowledge to get it, but you need time to get it there, right? Plus, we're in the middle of winter.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a factor, right? So if you practice every day, once a day with recall at the park and different parks and all that stuff, you're going to get it faster. If you practice once a week, you're going to get it very slowly, okay? So recall is really based on how much time and effort you put into it, and plus where you practice. Because if you always practice at the same place, she's going to be perfect there, but not as good as in new areas. Okay. So I always tell people, once you get it down, start going out to different places to start making it really reliable, because we want recall to be effective no matter what.
Yeah.
Okay. The sit, stay down, sit, stay down, place, those 4 commands, if we end up teaching those you can practice inside.
Yeah.
Right. So as long as you're applying them and practicing them, those would progress at your rate. Okay. So if you practice less, it's going to progress slowly. If you practice every day and you're applying them every day, because that's the important thing, applying them.
Yep.
Right. So most people, when they're inside the house, they wouldn't like have their dog lay down for 3 hours under their control. right? Usually the dog's doing whatever they want. But I'm like, well, if you're home all day, that's the time you practice your dog laying down for 3 hours.
Yeah.
Right. It's not going to transfer from 10 minutes here to like 3 hours at the restaurant. You have to do it. Okay. So that stuff is easy to progress. It's just people typically don't. I think part of the reason people don't do it is because it is so easy. Oh, I practice whenever I want. And then they don't.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but I give you examples. I'm like, if you're going to watch TV, if you're going to watch Netflix, if you're going to cook, if you're going to eat dinner, if you're going to work from home on the computer, those are all times where you can just have your dog sit there under your command, doing nothing. And if they move, you would correct them so that, when you're out at the park and you want to sit down at a bench and like have her lay down at your feet and like not be a jerk, you have it.
Yep.
Okay. The only command that really takes effort is recall, or if you're doing a longer program, like the 12-week one, and we're trying to push the commands to a higher level, then that requires you to do more work. Okay. Because we have to obviously practice things outside in order for it to become effective outside.
Yep.
Okay. Other questions?
I don't think so. If there's any information like on pricing, I guess, I don't know if you want to give it now or in an email, just so you have some time to contemplate. I don't know.
I know the 6-week, and Maria will send you this, so don't take me. I know the general because I priced them out a while ago. 6-week is $950. 9-week is like $11.75, I believe, and then the 12-week is like 16 something.
Okay.
On the website.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but Maria will send them to you, and that's for training at my facility or training. We were training at Oz Park, but it's too cold now because of the lake, so we train outside at Palmer Square. I have like 2 clients right now that are training outside. Almost everybody is training in my facility. One of the concerns that people have, especially with reactivity, is like, well, how does this transfer to my neighborhood? Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty logical.
Yeah.
If we're working with Zuri at my facility and her number is 25, okay, and she's great at 25 here, and you go to your neighborhood, there's gonna be more stimuli, there's gonna be dogs, there's gonna be people, right, all that stuff. Your number just maybe 65.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the thing about e-collar. You can vary the range and the power. So if you're like, yeah, at the facility, Jesse, it's 25, but when we go home, 25 didn't work. We have to go up to 65. I'm like, yep, sounds about right. Right. As long as she's behaving herself, we're not seeing reactivity. Sounds right to me. Okay. So once you understand, like, oh, more stuff going on, probably going to need a higher number. You just go up higher and you'll start to learn reference points. So then when you see a dog, 85, no dogs, 45, Jesse's facility, 25, right? Like you'll just kind of know depending on the context, and it's really just intuitive.
Gotcha.
Other questions?
If we were to purchase an e-collar, like would we do that through you or just
Amazon.
on Amazon? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll send you the make and model.
Okay.
It's about $325-ish with tax.
Yep.
They last a really long time. Fully waterproof system, both the transmitter and the receiver, 1 mile range, meant for a dog of your, of your size and breed and behavior or whatever. Most common thing that I see is because it is a rechargeable lithium battery, the battery does die over time, a couple of years or whatever. So if that happens, you go on the website, you find the battery you need, $25, $20, whatever, you order it, you replace it, you're good to go.
Okay.
And some people get lucky. Like I've had mine for 8 years, no problems.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The battery just doesn't last as long. It's like, I think an hour-long battery. In the beginning, it used to last me like, forever, but like, I'm not going to be out with my dog longer than an hour. So I'm fine with it. So the most common question that I get is, when does the e-collar go away? In my book, when you need it, it doesn't. Okay. So this means when you're outside on a walk, if she were to ever be off leash or get off leash or whatever like that, they would be present. If she's a great dog inside the house and you don't care about the window reactivity, she doesn't need it. Okay. If guests are going to come over and she's like really excited when guests come over and you want her to be like calm or under control, you would need it. Right. So people always ask, like, if we're training the dog, why does the dog need it after the training? Right. Because in our world, or in the human world, if you train to do something and you learn that skill, you no longer need training. right? But that's because we're humans and we're proactive. You know, so if you got a promotion at your job and they trained you for that role, you could then go into work and proactively apply those skills that you learned.
Yeah.
Dogs don't do that. Okay, so I don't like the word dog training because dog training implies it's done at some point. Um, do you guys drive?
We don't right now. Possibly looking into getting a car in the near future.
Sure. You know how to drive? And
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
have you driven on the expressway?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you go the speed limit?
Sometimes.
Well over usually.
So the reason why I asked that is because most people don't go the speed limit. Most people speed, right? On the expressway at least. But when we see a squad car, what happens?
Slow down.
Slow down, right? Because now there's threat of consequence. So I think of the e-collar as the same thing. Okay, e-collar is a cop on a collar. When she's got it on, she's gonna know threat of consequence. She's gonna know, oh, maybe I need to behave myself, right? She's gonna think twice about things because she knows you have means of control. Okay, it's called opportunistic behavior. All animals have it. It's part of survival instinct. So as humans, you know, and we know better, and we are aware of laws and not going over 70 and blah blah blah. We still do it because we know we can get away with it, right? Dogs are the same way. When she knows that collar is off, she's going to be reactive, and she's going to be a brat, and she's going to not listen, blah 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 blah. And then when it is on, she's going to be much more better behaved. Okay, it's just the way it is. It has nothing to do with my methods, my skills as a trainer. It has nothing to do with the methods. It's just opportunistic behavior. Okay, and you'll read a lot of craziness out there where people are like, oh, you should train your dog, learn how to be a good dog, right, and all this stuff. I'm like, dogs don't do that. So
yeah.
Other questions or concerns?
I think that answers a lot of our questions that we have. I mean, excited to see what a dog she can become, because I think we're kind of at the point where it's like, this isn't working and it's just stressful.
Sure. What neighborhood you guys in?
Lincoln Park, which is a shame that you're not going to Oz Park right now, but
we're real close to
yeah,
Oz
really
Park,
close.
So.
Sure. Yeah, no, Oz, I had someone at Oz, and with that lake breeze, it is cold.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Right now it's terrible.
So if you're trying to get started sooner rather than later, one thing we could do is I have my trainer Enrique. He's been with me for over a year now, and he's been getting some clients of his own. So if you would like someone who would do, because I still do in-home, like I still come to my clients, it's just at a more expensive rate because everybody comes to me now. Okay. Yeah. If you would like to get it for the in-facility rate, but have someone come to you, I can send out Enrique. Okay. And he's worked with his own behavior cases and stuff like that. He's got an aggression case right now because he's got to learn, and he comes to me and he talks to me and stuff. But he's a good trainer, and he's very skilled, and he knows all the stuff that I would teach you. And so if you wanted to do that, not have to wait on all that stuff, we can set that up with him. His schedule is a little bit different just because, like, I work all the time because of my business. He's more on a fixed schedule, so we just have to coordinate that. Yeah. So you have a number of options that you can talk to with Maria. If you're trying to get this done, right, and not have to wait. Otherwise, we will be going back to Oz Park, but it's not going to be until the weather warms up a little bit.
Yeah.
Or
makes sense.
I tell them to. I've been doing this too long. I'm too old. Okay, but we can figure this out. It's not a problem. Any questions?
No, thank you so much for walking us through it all.
For sure. So I'll talk to Maria. She'll follow up with you. And then I'll mention to her the options, and you just kind of mull it over and then talk to her. And then we'll coordinate, you know, if you decide like, yeah, we want to start now, and we'll take Enrique in home and he'll go to your neighborhood and all that stuff. So you can train in your neighborhood. Otherwise, you can also book for the future. If if you are thinking of booking later in the spring, my suggestion would be you book ahead of time.
Yeah.
Okay, because my schedule is getting full. We had in January a ton of consultations and new clients signing in. I have people that are just barely like I have just got someone who's not going to start till March 1st.
Okay.
But I saw them like 2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
So so that in terms of working with me, my availability is kind of all over the place. Maria would help you on that. But if you're trying to book later, then my suggestion is you just reserve your time for a future date, and then we'll see you then.
Okay.
Okay.
That works.
Awesome.
Awesome, guys. It was a pleasure meeting you. And if you have any other questions, you let us know. Otherwise, Maria will get in touch. Okay.
Thank
Sounds
you
great.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
Have
you.
a good one.
Take care.